Now that Uncharted 4 is wrapped up, I'm very happy with the way it turned out. The art team has done just an amazing job taking these sort of esoteric technical tools and making beautiful vistas and gorgeous cinematics.
When people talk about graphics in Uncharted, it's like how pretty things are. But there is like this other level that deals with how we're going to portray all these things in the screen.
What makes Uncharted 4's graphics unique is we have a physically based render. The material response, the lighting, everything obeys as close as we can the physical rules of reality. But the art direction specified almost a more painterly look. The landscapes are rich, the clouds are rich, nothing is like bright and overexposed. It doesn't look like somebody's photo that they posted on the internet. It looks like somebody painted it. And there's a lot of subtlety that went into the rendering tech, but also just the way our artists used the tools to achieve that sort of painterly, realist look. The biggest technical challenge with Uncharted 4 was just the sheer variety of stuff that we have to do and do well.
As a lead technical artist, what you usually do is just try to find that kind of bridge between programming and art, and try to make sure that kind of the needs of both are met.
Graphics programming is not a very sexy task. It's like there's a lot of like very low level stuff. We can see things from very high level systems like, how we're going to be rendering skin, or how we're going to be able to portray hair or water. So they see the graphics, but they don't see like the amount of work from the graphics perspective. There's a lot of challenges not seen straight away, but it's like rendering a lot of like the hair and anything with the glass surface. It's actually very complicated.
First, basically there's the geometry phase where we render all of the objects in the world. After that, we have atmosphere. That kind of includes particles too, whether that's dust or environmental effects. And then there's post-processing, which is a mix of just kind of technical features like anti-aliasing, but also artistic features like color tint.
So we in the engine, we have to support different types of lighting, from ambient lighting to direct lighting from the sun.
Rendering a cinematic is fundamentally all of the same tech as rendering gameplay. The only difference is in the way we use the tech. We do a lot more custom runtime lights. We'll often do a standard 3-point lighting setup with a key, a fill, and a rim light on a character. Sometimes we do special lights to put an extra glint in the character's eye.
To render a character in cinematics, you have to bring out what the character is. You have to have these very dramatic lights, which is just to create like more mood into the scenes.
Lighting is really critical to making our wide vistas look really believable. It's not just a matter of placing a sun and some blue sky. The atmosphere is also controlled by the lighting artists. So the way things get hazy in the distance, the fall off of that haze is really important to the sense of depth.
And we actually have 2 layers of fog if we need to kind of exaggerate parts that are further in the distance or change something up for stuff that's up close. And then obviously effects plays a huge role because they take a pass on the vista and add all the sort of clouds and volumetrics that are more localized and specific to the environment rather than being a global fog effect. A big part of creating these gigantic scenes where you can see really, really far off is composition. And it's really great because we try and create our environments in a fashion that would lead you to look at a particular set piece in the distance.
The plains of Madagascar were actually one of our major kind of optimization efforts of the engine. Because you can see so far, and this really isn't an open world game, we had to find ways to be able to push just tons and tons of geometry through the renderer. So our engineers kind of teamed up with a couple of the environment artists, and we did some just raw brute force engine optimization, but we also came up with a bunch of clever techniques.
Basically what we ended up doing is every single section that you went through had a low resolution version of it that we would just swap behind your back. So when you're looking back or left or right or in front of you even, there are all these multiple versions of these environments that look indistinguishable at a distance, but they lack all of the super high fidelity detail.
And at the same time, it's like be able to fade them like very smoothly closer to the camera and have this high quality. At the same time, you have the grass, all the leaves is like in the trees. It's like those are things that they need to be transitioned as well as we are driving from one side to the other of this vast expanse of terrain.
I guess the great thing about Naughty Dog is we don't ever set out to make the biggest game out there. We just go out there to make the biggest thing that we can possibly make every time. For the longest time, I forced myself not to like it as we were developing it because I felt that it was more productive. Because there were all these things that I wanted to pick apart and be like, oh, we can make this better, we should make this better. But towards the end of it, it was so hard not to like it.
PlayStation